everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to Paws On Animation.
And this time we're covering the classic fairy tale movie, Sleeping Beauty.
Now this film would not become a staple for Disney fairy tales for decades, but also introduced one of the greatest Disney villains of all time, Maleficent.
Yes, and before we start with that, be sure to like, subscribe, notifications on future podcasts and on the Pause videos.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us for our Classic Disney Week. Subscribing, sharing our videos, we appreciate you so much.
Yes.
So Sleeping Beauty is a 1959 American animated musical fantasy film.
That's a lot of names.
Produced by Walt Disney Productions and released by Buena Vista Distribution. Now, it's based on Charles Perrault's 1697 fairy tale, just like Cinderella was.
Mm-hmm.
And the production was supervised by Claude Geronimi and directed by Wolfgang Reitherman, Eric Larson, and Les Clark. So, the film follows Princess Aurora, who was cursed by the evil fairy Maleficent to die from a prick on the spindle of the spinning wheel. And she's saved by the three good fairies.
Yes.
Who, after Aurora's curse, who alter her curse so that she doesn't die, but she falls asleep instead.
Right.
And yet again, another dark Disney movie.
And it's so weird when we watch a lot of these classics, and not only do we appreciate them a lot more after some of their recent films, but the people who worked at Disney have quoted that, they didn't want to put certain things in the movie because they don't want to frighten children. They took certain aspects of a lot of their films out that would have a darker tone, darker villains, darker edge to it. And they said they don't want to do any of that because they want to scare kids. They felt bad doing it. They didn't like it was so dark. They didn't like all the evil and blah, blah, blah. And then a lot of people come out and said, just about every movie you come out until these past 10 years have had a dark tone to it, a dark villain. The villain dies in the end. Someone dies in the movie. They literally said had hellfire in a movie. But, no, that's too much. So Sleeping Beauty, those really want to paint it as, it's just this fanciful film. No, it has a darkness to it, too.
Yes. Now, this movie, like others we've covered, had a storyline written by multiple people. This one had 7 writers. But this time, only directed by 4 people.
Okay.
Rather than 8 to 10.
Right.
And the movie originally ran 75 minutes. It had a budget of $6 million when it was made in 1959, and when released, it earned $51.6 million at the box office. Again, proving Walt Disney knew how to an investment and get a very large return.
Yes. And one other thing you notice about this movie and some of the other ones you've covered that are classics, that they're not very long. Some of them don't even hit 90 minutes, and they sure as heck aren't 2 hours or hitting the 2-hour mark. And they told one story, and back when the stories were simple and they didn't need a whole lot of them, which is fine for these types of films that we're making, you had one basic story, but a lot of the detail came into the characters. They were the strongest suit of the entire story. If you read the story, you know how it goes. What makes the Disney one so unique is that every character has so much personality and presence that this is the one everyone goes to when talking about someone's take on a fairy tale. The Disney one is the go-to.
And there's another couple interesting things we mentioned about the characters. Before we get to that, this movie actually began development in 1950, and it took nearly a decade to make.
Wow.
So $6 million at that time was a lot of money.
Right.
But still, his return on taking his time and making sure everything was right.
Right.
Even though it took almost a decade and had delays, it was well worth the time for them.
Right.
Think about it.
Right.
It made almost 10 times the amount.
Yeah. It's such a huge comeback for it. And you could see, a lot of these movies, they earn the money and 10 times over. Even when you see some flaws in it here and there, now, looking back at them, they were still worthy of the awards they've gotten, or the hype they were given back before hype was a word for people, and how these stories end up becoming such classics for pop culture and for the company.
Now, for some reason, it was considered a box office bomb when it was
back
released.
then.
Yeah. And it grossed $5.3 million in the opening initial release.
Right.
Well, that's almost the whole $6 million back, so I'm not sure why. But
weird.
Good news is the film was actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Scoring of a Musical Picture at the 32nd Academy Awards.
Right.
So let's get to the characters. First, let's get to Princess Aurora, also known as Briar Rose, also known as Sleeping Beauty. I think for her, she's the oldest looking princess.
Yeah.
She's not.
I forgot she was a teenager in
Yeah,
here.
she's 16, but she looks older in her design and she sounds older in her voice acting.
Yeah.
And you're right, you forget when you're looking at her that this is not an adult that they're protecting. This is a 16-year-old. And she was voiced by Mary Costa. And she is a little different from both Snow White and Cinderella in terms of not having that innocence where I just cry and I'll go with what happens. She was a little defiant. I don't want to marry the one you're setting me up with. I want to marry this man I saw in the woods.
Yeah, for the short time she's on screen, at least you still know personality because you really don't see her that much in the movie. You saw her being the title character, really.
Yes.
She's a baby for the first half. They fast forward 16 years later when the curse is almost time for the curse to pass. You see her for a short time, and then after this thing happens where she ends up getting the fingerprint, she falls asleep. That's it for the rest of the stuff in the movie. And it's so hilarious.
Yes, I think that absolutely the good fairies are really the star of this movie. Before we get to that, we also have Prince Philip, Aurora's bold and spirited true love.
Bold, okay.
Voiced by Bill Shirley. Yeah, he was bold. He's like, I don't care. I want to marry this girl I saw in the woods.
What?
So they both had the same attitude. I don't care who I'm in trust with. I want to marry the one I saw in the woods. And
well,
so
now
the thing about it is funny because they were both displaying bravery in terms of the way the movies are being made then. Oh, no, you just go with who we want you to go with. Oh, here's your true love. No, that's not my true love. This is my true love. So like, Blue, is she your one true love? So they're not knowing, of course, that they each were the same person. They were defined and said no.
Right.
Then you have Maleficent, who, of course, was a powerful evil fairy, self-proclaimed mistress of evil. And this witch got upset because she wasn't invited to the
Like what?
and she was voiced by Eleanor Audley. We found it very funny when we were watching it that she came in like she was so hurt. She wasn't really hurt. She was just jealous.
Of course.
And she
was
wanted
born.
to curse her so that I guess she wouldn't come above her. And that seemed to be a running theme in these movies, the classic movies, that you had older women who were beautiful and accomplished but jealous of younger girls.
Yeah, that's
and wanted
been a
to
theme.
take them down.
Yeah. So it's ironic that this is in here, and then now they don't want any female villains because women should not fight other women. Women should not be portrayed as villains. And if they are villains, they're misunderstood. They reform at the end. They never have had, in the last 10 years, just a female villain that just stays a female villain. There has to be some type of circumstance or someone else's fault that this woman is a villain. Here, Maleficent has no reason, unless, don't count the movie that they made later where they make up a tragic backstory. She just was evil. She was jealous. She put the curse on her and just waited.
And she was responsible for every problem the kingdom had.
Pretty much.
So instead
knew
of
about
the king being afraid of her, which clearly he was, he should have kicked her butt out of the kingdom.
Get out.
That would have solved everything. But no, he was afraid of her.
Right.
So when they said, "Oh, the classic movies had weak characters," this
No.
ruler, this king, this patriarch like Barbie, was afraid of this woman.
Yeah.
And let her wreak all this havoc, not only before Sleeping Beauty was born, but after she was born, and for the 16 years up into her curse went into effect, he was afraid of her.
Yeah.
So how much stronger a woman do you need in these
Right,
movies?
exactly. Decades ago.
So you have the three fairies, voiced by Verna Felton as Flora, Barbara Luddy as Merryweather, and Barbara Jo Allen as Fauna. And they're affectionate, and feisty, impulsive, and Flora is the most domineering. And Flora's red, Merryweather's blue, and Fauna's green, right?
I think so, yes.
Or pink. Green.
Green. The name.
And make it pink. No. Make it blue.
pink. Like it's a whole running thing.
At the end of the movie, they still were doing this for the dress, and that was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But they have ensconced themselves in animated history because as soon as you see them, you know who they are.
Right.
And as you mentioned, they each had their own little personalities. They look similar, and they tended to be designed in a way that women, I guess, were viewed at that time when they were older. They were pudgy. They had these matronly
I guess like a
hairdos.
sweet older woman type design.
And they did a lot of fast talking. They didn't have a man. But when you get past that and you look at how, as you mentioned, they each had personalities, and they were so concerned about making sure that the curse didn't go into effect and she died. They were trying to prevent it entirely being activated.
And they raised her pretty much.
And they watched her like a hawk for 15 years, 364 days. And then on the 365th day,
the final day,
they take their eyes off her for a moment, and along comes Maleficent.
Oh my God!
And there we go.
And one thing we definitely need to bring up is that when they had these magical characters in here, now they actually served a purpose. And yes, here we go again. We thought of the reason why Star was changed in Wish. And they said, oh, well, Star's too powerful. He's going to be doing all the work. The princess won't do anything. We got to change all that. Well, here's the thing. This movie was made in the 50s. And towards the end of the movie, Prince Philip, right? Prince Philip is captured by Maleficent. She tried to prevent him from giving her the kiss that will wake her up.
Right.
And she throws him in the dungeon, and the fairy village, they got to rescue him. So they end up helping him and giving him the weapons that could defeat Maleficent, and they're kind of with him throughout almost the entire final battle. Even Maleficent turns to the famous dragon form. And here's the thing I have in here. You just proved that the magical characters are needed in these movies. They did not take over the film,
Nope.
but they were important. They helped the one without magic and gave them the tools to defeat the evil. So I don't understand what was wrong with Star having the abilities and providing more to the plot and thinking that the Asha wouldn't help when you just proved in this movie in 1953 the prince had no 1959 Prince had no powers. They came and gave him the tools he needed, and then he defeated the evil thanks to them. They worked together. So clearly that idea works, but you decided no, it doesn't work because we said so.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I was thinking when we were watching it, and he wasn't an arrogant.
Oh, toxic.
Hey,
Toxic masculinity.
There was no toxic
Gosh,
masculinity in Philip.
it's so
he
bad.
was happy to get the help, and when something kept happening after he realized they were helping him, he kept looking for them to help him. There was no toxic masculinity. He wanted his woman. He was like, help me, ladies, help me. And every time they helped him, he was like, thank you, thank you, thank you, until he got to his woman. But yes, you brought up an excellent point. Toxic masculinity, I can't even say it because it's a load of
stupid.
crock.
I'm sorry.
That's a load of crock. Plus, the magic took over is a load of crock. Plus, the woman didn't need help, a load of crock.
Right.
Because
so,
the man took help.
Right.
And he was happy to get it.
So,
and it was happy ever after. So
right, exactly. So what was the difference with Asha needing help from a magic star? Come on.
So back to Sleeping Beauty. And then we had two other men. We had King Stefan, Aurora's dad, voiced by Taylor Holmes, and King Hubert, Philip's dad, voiced by Bill Thompson. So you had an equal amount almost of men and women in here.
That's true.
But in this movie, all the women were strong.
That's true. No matter who they were, even with Aurora being sort of a smaller role, she still showed what she was strong in. She just didn't lie down and take whatever.
She didn't like being watched all the time, and she kept saying they act like I'm a child.
Right.
Yeah, she's the most outspoken.
Before this became common.
Of the three we've covered so far.
Yeah, before this became a common trope for the princesses, yeah.
And lastly, the film's narrator was Marvin Miller. Again, as always, we like to give a shout out to the voice actors. As far as we know, they've all passed on. If they haven't, let us know in the comments, but we wanted to give them some acknowledgement and some praise. This was expertly voice performance of everyone. And I'm surprised they didn't get more nominations for other awards rather than just the music.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because it's really one of those movies that, as you mentioned, is memorable and one that you go to and think of instantly when you think of classic Disney movies.
Right.
Now, I also want to mention that this is another one of those movies that was selected for preservation in the United States Library of Congress
Oh.
National Film Registry. Again, is culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Wow. Okay.
Now let's get to that live action reimagining Maleficent the Lie, released in 2014.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's been 10 years, but it has.
Yeah.
And that character was performed by Angelina Jolie.
Yeah. And with this one, we thought it was going to be literally a live action Sleeping Beauty. It kind of was, but it was really more so a live action Maleficent film. And at first you hear a Maleficent movie sounds fantastic, live action or animated. But until then, we ended up watching the movie at some point down the line and saw that the movie was taking the route of Wicked and ran into the ground of the synopsis of the villain who you thought was the villain isn't really a villain. They took the Wicked premise and they ran to the ground, so now every villain in the Disney vault is misunderstood and they're justifying their actions because they were wrong. And this is what started it all. So Maleficent went from being this mistress of evil, all-powerful woman to she was misjudged and she took back what was hers.
But honestly, I prefer this Maleficent better. No discount to Angelina Jolie's performance. She was excellent. But I like this Maleficent better because she was just evil for evil's sake.
That's it. There's no reason.
She was just evil. And again, even the ruler of the land, the king, was afraid of her.
Yes.
So, lastly, we just want to mention that since its release in 1959, Sleeping Beauty has become one of the most artistically acclaimed animated films ever produced by Walt Disney. It's always getting praise for its artistic direction, background, color styling.
And it's not watercolor.
Character animation as well. And it's considered, again, one of the most influential Disney features by the animation industry. So, if you've seen Sleeping Beauty, and we know you have, let us know what you think in the comments. If you haven't, get on Disney Plus. You can get it from your local library or probably buy it. But watch it. Come back and tell us what you think. It is a really great movie to watch. You're going to love the three fairies.
Yes.
They are just absolutely delightful. And again, it really to us is their movie. Everyone else is just a co-star.
Right.
Because they get the prominent placement in the movie.
Right. And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates and we'll give you free anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
And as always, thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you joining us. And as always, you are special.
Thank you so much for watching Mask Entertainment
and Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.
The management of this theater is proud to recommend this magnificent motion picture to every member of every family everywhere.